chorus. But anytime I have the opportunity to sing with or coach with or share with other barbershop, pretty potent stuff. And that's my story.
And you're sticking to it.
Yeah, thank you.
Joe?
This is such a wonderful story, and it points up the fact of the importance of us all sharing all the time, sharing what we know about our experiences of singing with other people. Not being selfish and just going to chapter meetings or going to quartet and just basically keeping it all in ourselves. We need to share the joy of singing with everybody we come across. Kay and I will be standing in a line of somewhere getting tickets to go to a theater or whatever, and somebody will be saying that, and I say, hey, do you like to sing? Well, not in front of anybody. I said, that's all right. If you like to sing, that's good for you. Keep singing. By the way.
Page 2.
Yeah. And so we should all be willing just to share this joy. Don't let it stay inside you. I don't know how you can keep it inside when you really start realizing what it does for your personal life. And I was so caught up. I knew Kay and I really loved Marge. And now I realize our backgrounds are so similar. I was raised in a Southern Baptist church, and there was lots of singing going on with that. And my grandmother was in the Assembly of God church. It's a little bit like the Nazarene church, I think. And they sang. So as a kid, I went to both churches because I visited with my grandma who lived on Galveston Island, and we were just across there in Lamarck, Texas, which is just right there on the Gulf of Mexico. So I went to all these churches, and out of all the different hymnals, I knew if you just call out a song, I knew what page it was on, I knew what key it was in, and the harmonic highways of these hymns and gospel songs are right in the same, we use the same basic harmonic highways in our barbershop music. So I was just raised on this kind of stuff. And when I went to college, I was going to be a math major, and there's a lot of mathematical stuff about music, so it's a lot of relation there. And I started playing for some gospel groups around there. In fact, I started what became Noonspiration at Baylor University. I went to a grand piano in a room of about this size, and just started playing hymns and gospel songs, and people would gather, and then every day at noon, we called it Noonspiration, people would bring what was left of their lunch or whatever, and we would just sing. And that went on, I don't know if they still have it, but it went on for many years afterwards. But I knew there was a music school there. So I made an appointment with the Dean Sternberg. He was a Russian descent and genius. He had perfect, not perfect pitch, but perfect visual. He directed big scores of music just from him. All he had to do was look at a page, and he had it. He was just one heck of a fabulous person too. And I made an appointment with him because I wanted to show him something I had discovered. finally we met. I went into his office. He had this 9-foot grand piano in his office. It was just fabulous. And I said, Dr. Sternberg, I've discovered something I think all musicians ought to know about. He said, well, come in, young man, and let's talk about it. He was just so kind. And I said, look here. This chord here, and I played C7. I said, this just pulls right to this chord. And I said, I played F7. And I played the entire circle of fifths all around. And I said, it not only works on these major chords with the 7, but the minor chords with that 7, they go that way too. He started laughing. He said, son, that's the circle of fifths, and we've known about that for some time. I said, what? And he said, you're not a music student, are you? He said, no. He said, I said, I think music is just something everybody should do. It's just part of our being. And he said, I want you to do something for me. I want you to take a couple of little tests here. And I think maybe you should be in music school. Well, I took some of the tests. And he convinced me that I should study about music. So I did there at the Baylor University, and I learned the names of all the stuff that I was doing.
What a surprise.
They had a name for all this stuff. And I got so excited. So then I just started right into it. And because I already knew how it fit in, the music theory and composition it was, and so I went to graduate school and got a degree in music theory and composition and did the vocal stuff, and then later on went to a seminary which had all these wonderful music teachers and professors, and just grew and finally became music director of a huge Baptist church in Abilene, Texas. And there in Abilene they had a Methodist school, a Baptist school, Hardin Simmons, McMurray College was the Methodist, and then they had a Church of Christ school. Now they all sang a cappella, but they didn't have instruments in the church. But in this church, I had a huge orchestra, a full orchestra, over, I believe, 880 people involved in the choir programs. I had brass choirs that played antiphonal brass from balcony to balcony. And in my orchestra, I had a few people from the students from the Church of Christ who I couldn't put their names in the program because they're not supposed to have instruments. And then students from Hardin Simmons University, McMurray, and we did major works, but also lots of gospel stuff. And what fun that was. Finally, I decided to work on a degree in choral conducting. So I went to the University of Texas. So I had to move to San Antonio, Texas, where a church found out that I wanted to do this, and they allowed me to commute back and forth to Austin, Texas, 80 miles away. And it was there, as I was working on that this guy in my choir, at the church choir, introduced me to the barbershop program. And I thought maybe when I got into it, and I told you the story about joining that chorus, when I joined it, I thought this was probably the only barbershop chorus in the whole world. I mean, there was these guys singing all this 4-part harmony that I just loved it, and it was strong. And one of the things I loved about it was it didn't have this academic atmosphere about it. They were doing it surely from the joy of singing. And that spoke to my heart. They weren't trying to learn about music so they could have jobs. They weren't trying to get above anybody else in the academic world. The whole mindset was the joy of singing, and that spoke to me because I had learned the joy of singing through all the gospel music and the hymns. That's where my heart was. And so then I started, after John, I started meeting people. Val Hicks, who had done arrangements for the Osmond Brothers, and Dave Stevens, who had done lots of arranging for the society. Bert Zabel. Just started meeting all these guys, and then I began to realize, were there other groups out there? We should have had some kind of orientation program in our chapter that said, hey, this is what you're becoming a part of. There's a whole world out there of barbershop singers, male and female. All kinds of races, all kinds of creeds and colors and whatever. There are people singing barbershop harmony. After a while, I began to realize this barbershop structure helps to emphasize all these overtones that we're trying to produce. It becomes part of creation, the physics principles of the universe. And those basses sing roots and fifths primarily. That helps to set up all this harmony. And the melody's inside the chord, which is so different than other styles where the melody is on the top most of the time. And however, in gospel music, they do have, it varies there. Then I began to realize just how important this style of music is, because it is part of creation, because of what it generates. And those little sounds up there that we hear, that we think of as overtones or harmonics and all that, those are angels. They're angels up there saying, "That's it, that's it." You're getting celestial response. In our music, we get celestial response. Don't you think? I can feel it. Anyway, so after I joined the chordsmen also, I couldn't get enough, so I sang in 2 quartets at the same time, tenor in one and baritone in the other, because that's the parts they needed. And just 6 weeks or so later, after I joined, they asked me to be their director, and so I started directing them and writing music, because that's what I'd done. I started writing songs when I was 6 years old, and I wrote them all the time. And now I've discovered barbershop. Wow! And all these just good old natural songs that create that harmony. Man, I found heaven. And then I started meeting people like Marge and some fabulous Sweet Adeline leadership, and this is a wonderful world that we live in. I'm so glad I'm a part of it, and my wife, is part of it, and we share all of this. So now we're co-directors of a small chorus, Sweet Adelines, and just having a blast. And we're gonna do this for the rest of our lives.
Here, here.
Okay, our next question has no right answer or wrong answer, but it's more to help